Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the co-owner and creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I want to talk to you a little bit about the topic of limerence and how it impacts dismissive avoidant individuals specifically. So if you're not familiar with what limerence is, it's essentially the state of being infatuated with somebody, and it can sort of lead to like a point of obsessiveness around a situation. On a full spectrum of limerence, you might see somebody who has like very strong feelings or a crush, and then on the other side, you might find somebody with like almost stalker-like behaviors that they exhibit. And so it can like really go from one extreme to another, and it's sort of this big spectrum in terms of how intense that limerence can be. Now, limerence itself comes from trauma at the subconscious level to a certain degree. Limerence's root cause is when we've essentially, as human beings, experience a huge void somewhere in our lives. And it can be either in this part of ourselves where we've repressed our wholeness, which usually occurs in the case of like repressing a trait or quality within ourselves so much because we've had conditioned associations built in that say that quality is wrong, or it's bad to express, or it could be dangerous or worthy of punishment. So for example, maybe you were in a household and that household was not a very safe space, and maybe there was a lot of arguing and conflict and sort of violence in the home. And maybe you learned, if I'm confident and I try to express myself and my opinions and say to stop, I just get punished further and it doesn't feel good. And so you learn to sort of repress that whole part of your outspokenness, your confidence, these sorts of things, because the conditioned association you built into that trait or those qualities are that it's not good and it's unsafe. And so what might happen, for example, is you might find that somebody who expresses a lot of confidence and is very outgoing or outspoken, you might feel so drawn to them. And part of this is because the subconscious mind feels drawn or attracted to things that it can actually sort of attach to by identification at a subconscious level to recreate a sense of wholeness. And the brain has a homeostatic impulse. And the brain essentially wants equilibrium, balance, wholeness as much as it possibly can find it. So we can have unmet needs, we can have traits, we can have things that are basically missing from ourselves and our personality and conditioning. And if something expresses those, if a person expresses something like that outside of us, the individual can feel so drawn to that person to the point where it becomes sort of this like extreme infatuation and maybe a center point of focus for like the course of your day. And so some, people who experience limerence at like a more reasonable level might find that they have a loss of appetite when they're very infatuated with somebody. They might find that they, have trouble sleeping at night, or they even like dream about the person a lot at night, or basically they have trouble focusing on their day-to-day tasks and life and having balance and groundedness across all 7 areas of life because limerence comes in so strongly. Now, when you look at the difference between secure and insecure attachment styles, what's really clear is that secure individuals generally have less trauma in their history. And it doesn't mean that, they won't experience trauma at some point in life, or they might experience trauma, post-childhood. There can be a traumatic event. But in terms of just trauma related to attachment and relationships and the rules we learn and the guidelines we have, obviously insecure people tend to experience that a lot more, which means they have a greater likelihood of having these voids within themselves. So for a dismissive avoidant individual specifically, a lot of people will say, oh, dismissive avoidants don't really experience a whole lot of limerence or extreme infatuation. But what I can tell you is from working with, hundreds of dismissive avoidant people over the years through workshops, through our school, through one-to-one client sessions, and having many, many of these conversations, dismissive avoidants do experience limerence, but they tend to experience it more quietly. And so where they have deeply unmet needs, where they have, repressed traits or qualities within themselves, they do infatuate very strongly with people who are there to sort of potentially balance that out. But there are 2 other factors that deeply impact this. One of these factors is that those strong feelings that they feel within themselves do not feel good because they feel overwhelming. So they actually, while a part of them at a subconscious level starts building positive associations towards like this thing that their subconscious is drawn to sort of identify or attach to and then create a greater sense of wholeness. While they're having that experience, this other part of their subconscious is basically having like a competing needs problem where it's like, no, these feelings are too strong. They make us feel unsafe. And a lack of safety is usually a bit of a trigger point. So they'll often sort of repress their feelings of limerence or try to like push them away or not think about the person or focus on themselves, as well as the fact that those feelings bring them a sense of vulnerability. And they don't like the feeling of vulnerability either. So they won't have limerence that gets like too out of hand. They'll experience it, but then they tend to repress it or get over it a lot more quickly. Or they won't do anything about it, if that makes sense. So they might have like these feelings of limerence, but they won't feed it. They won't try to then talk to the person or reach out to the person or anything like that. It'll sort of be something that more takes place and takes space in their internal reality. Now, this isn't always the case, but these are just like general large patterns that I'm seeing over the years. And so another point that's really interesting is I often found a huge pattern with dismissive avoidance also experiencing limerence around like fictional characters. So like, or even like maybe not fictional characters, but people that are unreachable. So like actors, actresses, people on television, characters in movies, all these different things. And after having many conversations with people about this over the years, what I basically found is that that's safer for the subconscious mind. And so it sort of gets rid of that competing need. So it's not uncommon for dismissive avoidants to strongly infatuate with people that they know that they basically can't connect to. And thus that need for safety, or that the fact that it could be vulnerable to feel that way about somebody, basically goes away because they know that nothing's actually going to come up in that area, but then it feeds the limerence indirectly over time. So it's not uncommon that dismissive avoidants essentially experience limerence with like people that are unreachable. And so it can be this very quiet internalized thing. And because dismissive avoidants are not ones to, overtly express their feelings too often, though of course they can at certain times and in certain circumstances as they become very close to people and become more secure over time and things like that, usually they do experience limerence, but it's just at this very quiet level, somewhat repressed, usually around a person that they know nothing will ever sort of happen to or with, and so that's their version of limerence, if that makes sense. So I actually forgot to say something earlier, so I'm just going to add this in here really quick. We're also doing a stay-at-home sale right now for everybody who is experiencing any boredom, restlessness, disconnect, anything like that around the whole COVID situation. And so we are extending coupon codes as well as scholarships. So if you just like can't afford to pay for the membership, we try to make everything super affordable as it is. But if you're having any financial challenges or job loss or anything like that, you can also reach out to my team at info@personaldevelopmentschool.com and they can set you up with a scholarship there. And we also have a coupon code that's with you. It's all one word and it's for 25% off individual course purchases and 3, 6, 12-month bundles. So you can go to sort of enroll in the school and then right at the checkout area, you just put with you in the coupon code and it'll give you that 25% off. So if you are the dismissive avoidant or you're the partner of a dismissive avoidant and you're watching this video for one of those two reasons, or even if you're like maybe a fearful avoidant with a strong dismissive side or something like that, what you can know is that number one, a dismissive avoidant usually doesn't act on their limerence and it usually doesn't get like out of control to the point where it like impacts a relationship. Although it can like temporarily sort of put the relationship on the rocks or make the person more withdrawn or something like that. Number two, they also don't develop this that easily. Anxious preoccupied attachment styles and fearful avoidant develop limerence a lot more easily and also a lot more frequently for reasons that I'll get into in those videos about those attachment styles specifically. And number three, whatever limerence is about, whether it's a trait or an unmet need, you can think of it as a feedback mechanism. It's basically letting you know, hey, these things need to be integrated. So if you're the dismissive avoidant person watching this and you're like, oh yeah, limerence is making me feel uneasy or out of balance, try to identify, okay, what is my limerence about? What traits am I infatuating with in this person so strongly? Or what needs do they represent that they could potentially meet for me that I'm so drawn to? And how can I work on either asking for those needs more in my life, meeting them myself, or work on like expressing and strengthening those traits within myself that I'm so drawn to in another person. And by doing this, you'll actually start to sort of lower the limerence itself. And one other strategy you can use if you don't like the imbalance that sort of gets created out of this is to focus essentially on like what are the downsides of those positive traits that I'm infatuating with. So if I think this person's so outgoing and you know that's such an amazing thing and I'm so drawn towards that, how can I work on that in myself to bring it into like a more balanced state? So I work on sort of harnessing my more outgoing side. And what are the downsides of being that outgoing? Oh, maybe they don't get time alone. Maybe they don't reflect as much because these very outgoing people are always around others. You know, and so you're basically looking to not see that trait or that quality through this one-sided perspective, like this single lens of it being exclusively positive and not having any negative traits, because really, technically, all traits, all qualities have both positive and negative sides to them whenever they get expressed in more extreme forms. So it's a good thing to just bring everything back into balance that way. So if you're interested in this sort of series and like learning more about this, I will do a video about the anxious preoccupied attachment style and limerence and how it shows up for them specifically, and some sort of key qualities you can use to work on that or work through that. And yeah, if you guys want to just keep letting me know any other videos you want to see, I will keep creating them. I'm trying to do a daily video as much as possible right now to support our community, and I will see you in the next video.